This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming at you Wednesday morning. It's October 11th. I said it was Wednesday morning yesterday also, but I think today is actually Wednesday. So that's where I'm at. We're doing shows
Confirmed.
almost daily. Recently in your feed, Kyle and I talked about the Wolves against the Mavs game 1 in Abu Dhabi. You can find that there. Chris Hine and I kind of talked about it overall on Monday with both games involved there. And then Britt and I kind of did something different yesterday. We previewed the Wings. So all those are back in your feed. Jace and I are kind of going to, just mostly because I've running out of things to talk about. Jace and I are going to talk about having the chance to talk to Karl and Ant at practice yesterday. We're going to kind of focus in on that a little bit. We haven't had a ton of access, Jace, to the players because they've been out of the country. Let's start with KAT. But before we get into kind of what KAT said at practice or what Finch has kind of said, I'm just curious if you and I haven't talked since those games. How surprised were you with how kind of awesome Karl looked in those first two preseason games?
Not too surprised, frankly. I mean, just because we saw I think what he has said has lined up with maybe what I thought. I thought he looked pretty good in the World Cup, and certainly I think team success wise at the very end there, they would have liked to have more success, and there are a few things he could have done differently, but he was aggressive, but also I thought pretty smart playing for the Dominican. And it's just such a great thing for somebody like him to be leaned upon so heavily, to the point where he's in great shape. He's sharp. These are all things that you can't really simulate basketball in the off season. So he's coming in a step ahead of where he usually is. And we saw Karl last year, in the way you thought of him at the start of the season, coming off of a major illness that kept him out for a long time. So he is probably 10 steps ahead of where he was this time last year right now. So I'm not surprised. And the matchup with Dallas is very good. They're starting young rookie bigs, not surprised at all. And I think it's a great thing for Minnesota to have Karl gain some confidence and comfort in himself and what he's doing and what he should be doing out there as they kind of go into year 2 of this multi-big experience, because an aggressive Karl is a good Karl.
Yes. I think part of my, not concern, but maybe expectation for what World Cup Karl would look like for the DR is all right, that's not one of the better FIBA teams out there. They're going to feed Karl a bunch. And I was okay, well, I'm assuming he's going to be their center. I kind of assumed going into World Cup that they were just going to post him up a bunch because frankly, he probably would have been really good at that in the World Cup setting. But then when I'm watching those first couple games, I'm they're playing Karl at the 4, basically, or in the way that Karl is going to play the 4 for this team. So, or for the Timberwolves next to Rudy. So I think it was really productive in that sense too, where you're right. It was simulated actual basketball, but also the actual basketball he's going to play. I thought that's why, it's preseason or whatever, but I felt like he had a really good, feel for spacing on the perimeter and awareness of where Rudy was. Cause for the whole summer, he played with the center in the dunker spot and just shot a bunch of threes. It's not it's a super novel concept, but it's good. It's good for him to have gotten reps in that. I think for sure. And Finch has been super, I think, encouraged by that as well.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when Ant said yesterday, he's Karl can shoot things from out there, so we need him out there, basically we need Karl to stay outside, and launch threes. And honestly, for this team, that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
It just removes so much of the decision making, and decision making.
It's never only exclusively threes. It's just the idea of
yes,
stay back there. He's still gonna drive. He's still gonna get his inside the arc, but lean that way.
Yes. And I mean, I don't even mean decision making in terms of Karl can't make good decisions. Ant gets in the same issues when he's driving into kind of a clogged area. When Rudy's on the court, play it a little differently, be a spacer. There will be other opportunities opened up for you. Rudy won't always be solely in the dunker. He'll be there a lot, but you'll find other opportunities. Just simplify the game for yourself. And with the couple options you have, be aggressive and knowing that you're making the right choice, and react quickly and just go. Yeah, I think he just looked really decisive and comfortable, and I think that's kind of how everybody looked. But
Yeah.
that is largely based off KAT, because if he's not being decisive, then everything's going to get bogged down. So I think if everybody's being decisive, it makes the game much easier for all 5 of them.
Here's what Finch had to say at practice yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, he's it's like we've told him, just worry about yourself. Don't try to get everybody else involved. Get yourself going. Do the things that you're really good at. Attacking from the top of the floor. He's going to get a lot of open looks. He's got to be shot ready. Thought he was. Some of them just didn't go down, but he got a lot of really good looks. Defensively, I've been really pleased with him. He's really moving well. He's challenging everything, getting through a lot of actions. He looks sharp. His time away this summer with the Dominican team, you could tell, has put him in great shape. His mindset's right where it needs to be. And I thought those guys played really well together. I thought that they looked like they had kind of solved some things early. We still have a long way to go, but early they looked really organized.
Did you think that was something for him to work through early last year, especially of maybe passing too much or like trying to
100%. Yeah, we all know KAT, he's a pleaser by nature. He wants, to make everything work. People, and with the Rudy thing, he wanted to be the guy to make it work and ingratiate Rudy into the fold. So, and I think at times it kind of cost him, his opportunities.
So, Jace, what did you make of that? Or what do you make of that kind of idea from last year where KAT was trying to overly, get it to Rudy, and then also yesterday, Karl kind of said no, I was just doing what was told. When those are obviously kind of conflicting pieces there, but
it was weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe, let me just, let's play the KAT one there to go sort of back to back. And this is, I don't know, a little bit of a bigger topic. Karl is not a bigger topic, but Karl's been very short with his answers. So I don't know if there's some alternative points that he's trying to prove elsewhere, but just for context, Finch said that, Karl comes over, he says this.
Basketball standpoint, what can you take from the way you were playing for the DR and apply to this?
Just be aggressive, look for my shot at all times, and put the ball in the basket more than not.
Coach Finch said that he did speak to you a little bit. He thought that maybe early last year you were almost trying a little too hard to move the ball and get Rudy more involved and maybe sacrificing some of your own opportunities offensively. Is that in your mind as you kind of go out there now and just be more aggressive looking for your own?
I was just doing what I was told, I was told to move the ball, and I thought I did that.
So again, we got a couple things going on here. Karl's clearly not in a talkative mood to start the season, whatever. That's his prerogative. I don't know. I don't even really care to go into that, honestly, Jace. Let's let the game start. Karl said later on that, he did want to talk because there's not a lot that's been happening. I'm more trying to focus on the basketball stuff, which is Finch saying he clearly did try to overpass to get to Rudy last season, and Karl was saying he was doing what he was told. Those things kind of conflict. Whatever. I think those are signaling different things to the media or whatever.
Yeah.
My question is have you guys figured out what that balance is that you want for Karl's distribution versus aggression offensively? Because obviously that is one of the biggest questions hanging over the Minnesota Timberwolves is can they find a way to effectively integrate offensively between those two players? So defining what that aggression is versus or individual aggression versus distribution is super important. And I don't know, maybe we should just not be taking too much of the Karl stuff on the chest until he's maybe moved on a little bit from the comments from the summer. I think that's probably a factor in, maybe I was too outspoken in the summer. I got pushback from that. I'm gonna be really quiet now. I don't know. I just want to understand what they're thinking about this team from a basketball standpoint.
Yeah, I hear you. You just want to learn more about what the approach is. And so when you don't get that, it's
which Karl is typically very open with sharing. And like kind of
And I
gets
think
that that's what we're
there's a
getting
little
at.
bit of a balance of like that's never what gets criticized is when you're trying to supply insight into that. But I think he's just kind of going like this is the approach he wants to take to
Sure.
start the year, and he thinks like this is I think the way that's going to reduce the noise the most around me probably, and just
Hey,
allow
man,
me to
more
focus on
power to you.
basketball.
Cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
100%, and I'm totally fine with that. I think the thing about like I was doing what I was told last year. To some degree, I don't think he's wrong in that. Do you remember the start of last year? Like we were just everybody was praising Karl for like the passing
Sure.
and looking for Rudy on the lobs and stuff. And they're like, well, and I remember even when Karl went out, it was like, well, Rudy and Karl did one of the better jobs finding a chemistry with Rudy. Like people were saying that a lot. And so I think
we both were.
Yeah, I think
we both
right,
believe that. Yeah.
Sure. And so I think Karl's probably like, okay.
Yeah,
I got a lot of praise back then for how much I was passing and looking for Rudy and whatnot and trying to create. I guess it was too much. But I do think now, I think it's possible that you can both say, yep, that's what we wanted last year. Looking back on it, probably not the best formula for this lineup having success. Now we think Karl just needs to be really aggressive with his offense. And I think that's right. I do think like Karl trying to be a distributor to Rudy, and whether that was asked of him or not, like it was praised at the time. It's just not the best version of Karl. Like Karl sacrificing in that way is not maximizing Karl, and you want it to work in a way where everybody can be maximized, and not like Karl can't be sacrificing his offense because he's already like becoming automatically a worse defensive player having to play power forward. So he can't also become a less impactful offensive player. Like he needs to maximize his offense otherwise why is he on the floor? So I think him being that spacer, being aggressive, like being one of the key offensive cogs who defenses constantly have to be worried about and accounting for, and sacrificing elsewhere to cover up. Yeah, that's the maximizing way. And I think the coaching staff even probably believes that more now than they did a year ago themselves.
I just want to complete the point on the short answers from Karl because frankly, I think some people be more in tune to that than us talking about him passing to Rudy or whatever.
Sure.
So Karl was, and credit to Darren Wolfson, I think, for asking Karl this because it's something all of us had been thinking about. And I think
it was very obvious on Media Day. Yeah.
It was very obvious on Media Day. Again, for people listening right now, if you didn't hear that, but you just heard those other two answers, like Karl hasn't done more than like a 5-10 word answer in either of his media availabilities thus far this season, which again, at least on me and Jace's behalf, like that, I'm dead serious. It's not me like whining about. I'm not even a writer.
No,
and it's not about that. It's just such a different behavior from Karl. That again, credit to Doogie for asking him this, and Karl states his point here, and it's like, okay, by all means.
KAT, just an observation. You seem more subdued, right? I mean, like in the past, you've given long, detailed answers, but going back to Media Day now, just seems like you're a little bit shorter. I'm just curious, is that by design?
There's not much to say. Get the job done.
It's always funny when that's like the last question because like, and it was like Doogie asked it at the end. I think it's an appropriate time to ask it. And, but it's just like, and then it's just like a walk off. It's like, that's just the last question. Like nobody had anything else to ask, but yeah, I mean, I think it was important to ask it. And like you said, we don't care. Like Andrew Wiggins didn't give more than 10 words to an answer throughout his entire Timberwolves career. And that's fine. It was just who he was. And you knew that. And like, you worked off of it. It's just,
the only reason
it's just interesting because it's the opposite of what Karl always does. You know?
I don't know when you were, just when that video was just playing right there, I flashed back to literally training and probably like almost exactly 365 days before. And I think you'd remember this. There's like a podium up there and he was like pounding on it. Like it's time to be great. Do you remember that? Like at training camp, he was like, it's time for the work. Like I should have had that video. I'm just thinking of it now. All I'm saying is it's a bizarre juxtaposition of the way in which Karl has always been in media availabilities versus how he is now. Like, frankly, I think this is a good move. It's like, there's not much to say. Like, let's go hoop. Let's play basketball. Like, actually, part of me kind of thought after he played really well in Abu Dhabi, maybe yesterday he'd come out at media, like really out there and loud. So he's sticking to his tune regardless of the quality of which he's playing, which is, I think, trying to signal, I'm trying to play very like delivered, focused basketball. We're trying to do that. Let's do that. And I'm with that 100%. I just think for both of us, you put it in your story at the end. yesterday. Chris, I know, wrote about it too. It's like, it's a noteworthy thing because this is Karl's 9th year in the NBA, and this is a different behavior to start a season than we'd ever seen before. I hope nobody thinks we're getting too Zapruder with it.
We would know whenever anybody changed anything about their approach, a star player. Like, and this is an approach he's taking to something. It definitely seems like he's like, let my basketball do the talking. Like, we would talk about somebody changing their workout approach, their eating habits, their and
we've done that with
stuff. And Karl, like his answers and whatnot have been a major storyline of his career in general. So if he changes his approach, we're at least going to note it. I don't think it's a huge story, but it is something that, here in training camp, it's worthy of noting briefly.
It's worthy of noting briefly, and what's significantly more noteworthy of noting is the fact that he looks damn good on the floor, and I think in his understanding of what his role is, and that is honestly like the biggest deal for this team. Like for success is him doing that.
What's going to be interesting is if can they keep doing that while facing more resistance than what Dallas provided.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to get to. Want to let you guys all know that again. So I've been kind of hammering you with this, but we do have the Falling Knife live show this Saturday. Britt and myself will be at Falling Knife's Wolves Fest October 14th, this Saturday, 4:00. We're kind of starting it. We want it to be a Wolves sort of brewery takeover. Wear your Wolves gear. We'll hang out. We'll be giving away merch, giving away some tickets. Hopefully they got some different beers and stuff they're going to be showcasing. There's going to hopefully kind of like a little bit more of a block party than some of the just live events we've had in the past. We'd love for a bunch of people to come to this. Britt and I did this last year as well. So put that on your radar. Again, this Saturday, 4 p.m., Britt and I live show at 5:00. 6:30 is the Wolves playing the Knicks, and we will all watch that together, which I think will be fun to do, particularly coming off of the 2 wins against the Mavs. So we'll see you all at Falling Knife. It's in Northeast Minneapolis if you haven't come before. And honestly, if there was one to come to, like, I think this would be it. On that graphic there, it said 6:00 start time for the game. I messed that up. It's 6:30 start time for the game.
Got to catch that Wolves live pregame.
Yeah, we'll get it on there.
Assuming there is one for preseason games, I think they do.
I don't know. I don't
know either.
It was NBA TV, right, for the Abu Dhabi games, which like I realized, like,
does Valley have this one? I'm assuming they do.
I think they do. I remember
we're all over it.
It was like 10:30 amp because those games were at 11.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like sit down to watch the Wolves game. And I'm like, oh, NBA TV. And I feel like whenever NBA every year, it's like, do I have NBA TV?
Yeah, I pull up my YouTube TV package and I'm like, NBA. Oh, nice. NBA TV's on here.
Oh, yeah. I was like, do I need to like individually buy this Abu Dhabi game for $9.99? Yeah. All right, let's keep moving. I mean, we can talk about, I think, KAT in the context of Ant as well. We talked with Ant a bit yesterday about kind of how they're shaping this offense and the idea of structure versus flow, which led to some interesting, I thought actually kind of an interesting topic of his relationship with Finch and how they're navigating this, because I hadn't really thought about yesterday before this is implementing more structure into the offense by Finch is putting more control over Ant, right? Which we both agree is a good thing. I think more structure is actually good for Ant to control his shot selection, et cetera, et cetera. But your star player and highest usage player really has to trust the style of offense that you're playing for it to be able to work. And we haven't talked about this with Ant much. We didn't really know how much more structured it would be. I think we saw 2 games, and I don't know, at least in my perception, like think this is going to be a pretty substantially more structured team than it was a year ago. What are you just kind of thinking about how Ant, I know you think that this is good for Ant, but how do you think Ant is going to handle more of a play set driven offense this season?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the structure is for Ant and Karl. That's who I think it's for. Like, I know it's always just you think it's for Rudy because of spacing stuff. Like it's for Ant and Karl, I think, to have clear direction and instruction as to where you should go when you first touch the ball to make sure that it doesn't stick. And I think for Ant, it's a good simplifier of like, you get the ball, and if you have something to do when you get the ball, like to start the play, like now the ball is moving and you're going to get the ball likely back in a more advantageous position than you would if you just went and got it. And then just like we've seen possessions where Ant will dribble the ball for 12 seconds and then eventually like chuck up a bad three. And if it goes in, target center goes nuts. And then if not, it's like, that was not a good possession.
Right.
So I think it's good to avoid more of those possessions. And I think, you know, like I'm sure Ant would buy into that as well if you talk to him about that. But the question for me is always like, I think at the start of the games they will do that, but I never thought like in the first and second quarter, Ant sticky ball was like a big issue. It's always to me like you're down 7 in the third quarter. It's a tie game with 5 minutes to go in the fourth.
You're
like,
up by 20 in the fourth.
You're up by 20 in the fourth, and you're up like, if I hit this three, people are gonna go crazy and it's gonna be awesome. You know, like it's those types of moments like late in games where like, he kind of senses the moment and like oftentimes he delivers there, but there are plenty of times where like he can kind of lose them a game late too because of just bad shot selection where they don't generate anything good. So I want to see how committed they are to it. Like he's going to be committed to it now. He's going to be committed to it in the first quarter of games. How committed are you to it when everything in your body is like, I got to take over right here? Right. You can do that. Can you do it within the structure? Or do you feel like you kind of have to revert to habits that in the past sometimes work and sometimes sink the ship too?
This is kind of like a minute-long clip. I want to play it. It's about the structure and flow. And like the funny part is like Ant calling Finch's dog. I think like, but I think all of it is actually important in what we're talking about here. So here's Ant at practice on Tuesday discussing structure versus flow and kind of how that ties into his relationship with Chris Finch.
You and do what you do versus kind of following maybe some sets or whatever that is.
I mean, I've been under Finchy for going on like 2.5 years now, so we kind of got a good relationship to where he let me know when I'm shooting too much, or I let him know when I'm passing too much. So, you know, but nah, he's doing a great job, man. Yeah, he's the best. He's the best coach, if you ask me.
How's just that early on been for you with some of the structure that he's been implementing?
It's pretty good, man, because it keeps you focused. And I can't. It's easier to score when I'm getting guys involved. So he makes sure he put emphasis on that, especially with me. Puts me to the side all the time, like. Got to keep your teammates involved, you know what I'm saying? So he does a great job with it, even KAT, so it looks good.
Was the World Cup good for you in that way too, Ant? Just the way that they kind of emphasize
for sure,
just doing
the World Cup is always good because you come to training camp in shape, so yeah, that was the best thing.
Can you expound on your relationship with Finchy? Like, can he coach you incredibly hard?
Yeah, for sure, yeah, that's my dog. I fuck with Finchy. Yeah, that's my dog, for sure.
I mean, is there healthy back and forth though? Like,
yeah, for sure, yeah. Like I said, that's my dog. Yeah. If anybody know what that means, they know how our relationship is.
I was rewatching that after practice, Jace, and I don't think about it enough. When we go like big picture with the Wolves, right? And we go like next 5 years. The relationship between Finch and Ant, which by all accounts, or certainly our accounts, is a very good one. But the relationship of that and the effectiveness of that pairing and how Finch is or is not able to get the most out of whatever Ant is or isn't going to be is such an important variable. And I do think, again, that from a relationship standpoint, I think Finch actually does a really good job with that, just from having talked to like a lot of the players about it over the course of time. Like he really does seem to garner that respect. There's a trust factor. There's a appreciation, I think, of the some of the freedom that he does give them. I've always, my whole thing is kind of been going back like 2-3 years. It's like, when or if do you like hand the keys over to Ant and do you give him the Harden or the Luka role or whatever it might be, which is all just a way of saying like, how are you going to in what way are you going to try to empower your best player? And he has never done the Luka or Harden thing really, unless extremely necessary for like a couple weeks when a bunch of guys are injured.
Roster. They have nobody on the roster.
The goal has always been Ant within like the context of a group, which, that sounds like a great idea, but there's all this little minutia in there. And I think ultimately how Finch figures that all out and how the two of them figure that out together is going to go like a long way in determining, what at least the beginning of Ant's career is, or it turns out to be. It's a pretty important thing, right?
Yeah, it's huge, and that's where like anytime people kind of overreact and get on the like got to get rid of Finch or something, like I'm always in my head, I'm like, there's no way, like Chris Finch and Ant would not be happy if Chris Finch was ever fired, because he has like, this has been well documented about Ant. He loves being coached hard. He loves that. Like that is, he will tell you that dates back to like when he was like a middle school football player, like his cousin or somebody was his coach, and it'd be like,
he just doesn't take it like, just doesn't take it.
He doesn't take anything personally. He doesn't take anything personally. He doesn't. Yeah. He just like everything is water off his back. Like it's just, like, yeah, okay, you're probably right. I don't know. Or like he might just agree with it, but he'll be like, oh, okay. Like on to the next thing. Yeah. Sometimes he'll be like, oh, Finchy keeps telling me to drive. And I'm like, I'm the only one driving, man. Like, like, I mean, it just,
he's real about it.
Yeah. He doesn't take anything like too seriously, personally, whatever. So like, and Finch knows that. Like, I would say the one thing Chris Finch is awesome at is knowing how to manage different players. And like he knows he can be really hard on Ant, and that sets a great tone for the whole team, being like, wow, he's hard on Ant. Like we heard Austin Rivers talk about that on his podcast like last year. Like you wouldn't believe how hard he is on Anthony Edwards. And that makes it so you can be hard on everybody else. But Finch also won't be overly hard on the guys who can't handle it or who don't respond well enough to that, because guys do respond differently to different things. Like Finch has a great understanding of how to work with individuals and maximize them and get through to them. I think we've seen that during his time here. That's huge for any player. It's definitely huge for Ant. And I don't know if they ever will hand over the keys to Ant, because I don't know if they think that's what will maximize him. And maybe they watch enough of the playoffs to be like, Harden, Luka Ball doesn't really win championships, so why would we do that?
Yeah, and to be clear, for me, I just always kind of was like, again, like 2 years ago, I was like, well, these players who play like Ant, that's how a lot of these teams are really letting these guys go, right? Like it kind of started with like Russ, end of the OKC time. And then there was a lot of Harden in Houston and Luka, even Ja. Like, I was just kind of like, I don't know, if you're like a big athletic two, like that's just seems how teams are playing. I never, back then, I never was really like, oh, like maybe it will be something else. Maybe it will be a really structured offense. Maybe it will be two bigs. I'm talking about like before they traded for Rudy. But point being is this is the path that they're on. I don't know. Like maybe at some point, if the roster changes again 3-4 years down the line, it's a little bit more heliocentric Ant. But that's not what they're going right now. It's not what Finch believes is best. I know I've asked him about it like 4 or 5 times over the years, and he's always been like, no, like I get what you're getting at, but we believe Ant in this. He's always like, we want to get Ant as the secondary action as much as possible, because that's his superpower, right? That's what he always says. It's kind of like the second side, swing, Ant rips through.
Superpower.
Yeah. But particularly if you're 6'5", have a 40-inch vertical and are 240 pounds, like it is Ant superpower.
Every team should want to do is get your best player of the ball against a shifting defense and not a set defense, because like it's automatic at that point. Like but when you have like a Luka or a Harden, it's always against a set defense, and that's why when you're in the playoffs, when there's an even heavier scouting report and even more attention to detail, it's really hard to succeed. But if you can constantly be going against a shifting defense, then no matter what, no matter how structured they are defensively, no matter how good they are defensively, like you're compromised, and it's much easier to attack and much more difficult to defend, especially to defend without fouling. Like, so yeah, I think Finch has the idea of like, this is what's going to make life easiest for Ant. It's not always easy to execute. It takes guys having a real strong understanding of the way basketball should be played, frankly.
And volume, Jace, and like volume. Like, the reason, like, if the Houston Rockets could have gotten James Harden on the second side to do an empty side pick and roll, that would have got more points per possession than top of the key. But they're like, we can run this with Harden 45 times a
Right.
game and it's going to do it. So that's the
It takes
question.
the variable out of basketball. Like, it takes the variables out. You know how the
Yes.
possession is going to start, and it gives you a good
Yes.
idea of how it's going to finish, and you're okay with that result.
And while you have Karl-Anthony Towns, who is an elite offensive production player, it doesn't make sense to just be 45 pick and rolls for Ant with Karl placed in the corner. I'm with that 100%. And when Finch says it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Situationally, should run some high pick and roll with Ant. Situationally, Karl should be in the corner. And situationally, Ant should start off the ball and maybe get it late in the shot clock on the second side against a shifting defense, but also maybe doesn't touch it some possessions. Like, that's not the end of the world either, given the context of what this roster is with Rudy, with Karl, and with Conley, I think, who can initiate a possession himself as well. Let's move over to talking about the rotation. You were tweeting about this like right after the first game, where you're like,
in the middle of it.
Yeah. In the middle of it, you were like, damn, like, how are they going to play all these guys, right? Because they're trying to get Troy Brown into the mix in preseason. Jordan McLaughlin even looked good in the second game. I mean, they had Ant out the first game, Jaden out the second game, so like playing 9 or 10 guys was easy and natural. But I think your main point, I don't know if you texted this to me or tweeted it, but you were like, I kind of think like Nickeil might end up demanding 25, 28 minutes a game with his play. So and that is now like a sixth guy that you're trying to give 25 minutes to. It really, if that is true, if your thesis there is true, it's going to be hard to even get to 9 and probably never even be able to get to 10 or 11 guys. How are you just picturing this rotation sort of logjam?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I brought it up to Finch postgame, and even he was like, yeah, with us playing 3 bigs and Kyle playing at the 3, he basically said it's going to be a 9-man rotation. Like, he said that.
You remember what he said yesterday too? He's like, I don't even know if some of the dudes have like done the math yet.
Yeah, because I asked about training. I was like, is there competition? Like, you've seen it kind of ramp up with these guys knowing that basically like rotation spots are scarce? And he's like, yeah, you've seen a lot of great competition. I don't know if guys have done the math yet. And he's, like on how many spots are there or not there for them. But he has said, like, there's a lot of time. There's 2 weeks preseason games. Like, you just, like, with injuries and things shake out and your hands forced. So like, there's no point in like making any declarative statements right now anyway, because there's so much between now and then.
And the 2 guys who would be out of the rotation, or we assume to be out of the rotation, that are fringy for game 1 are Jordan McLaughlin and Troy Brown Jr. Right. Jordan McLaughlin has been in and out of the rotation the entirety of his career. And quite frankly, given his production last season, granted there was an injury there, like, he's not a no-brainer rotation guy at all. Right, so it's like, if he starts out of it, that's fine.
And Troy Brown was in and out of the Lakers rotation, I believe, at least after the trade.
No, I don't think he was not. I would just anecdotally of watching games, like, he played sometimes, he didn't play sometimes.
Right.
I don't know. Troy Brown really strikes me as very like vet, mature dude. I mean, I don't know him at all really at this point, but I don't think Jordan McLaughlin and Troy Brown Jr. like game 1 against Toronto and they get DMPs are gonna be like, what the, like.
No, and that wasn't why I was asking the question either. I don't think that'd be the case either. I don't see that being an issue. I just mean
it's the higher ones. It's like, is Shake going to be 12 minutes? Because everyone's like, oh, it's Shake Milton, like, manna from heaven, and he's going to play 2 stints for 6 minutes in the game. Kyle Anderson, is he going to be a 16-minute guy? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about only 240 minutes being available, and how do you even give that to your starting 5 plus Nickeil plus Kyle plus Nas? Just those 8 I think is even tight.
Right, and that's where I made the 8 and I tweeted it, and I was like, you can tell me, and people come back and they're like, well, you don't want this guy at that many, and I understand that. And you're right on a night-to-night basis, but like my 8-man rotation, KAT played 34. Not an egregious number. It's just like on a night. Say like it's a game you want to win. Like you're hosting the Heat in the home opener. It's competitive. You're trying to win the game.
I would assume KAT plays 34 plus minutes in that unless he's in foul trouble. Yeah.
Right. Rudy at 32. Maybe you could bump it down to 30, but like Rudy at 32. Conley at 30. Again, over the course of the season, you probably don't want Conley right at 30, but like that's a fair number. Ant at 36, game you're trying to win for sure. Jaden at 34, easy. And then on these 3 guys, like Naz Reid, they love Naz Reid. They see Naz Reid as a big part of their future. They obviously paid him. They basically were like, here, this is our offseason, basically, is signing Naz. 25 minutes. Kyle Anderson was like one of their players that Finch trusted the most last year. 22. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker is maybe the one that's a little high on, but 27. And I think after watching him in the playoffs last year, watching him in the World Cup, watching him again in the exhibitions, it kind of seems like he's becoming that kind of two-way player where it's like, why is he not on the court at a lot of different times? And that considered 240 right there. So yeah, you could bump down Kyle to 18, and you can bump down Nickeil to 18, and you can bump down Naz to 22, and that gets you down to, let's see, 3, 12, 15 minutes for Shake if you bump down all those guys down to what I think they would consider to be low minute loads for themselves.
Yeah, and I think you do need to probably find 15 or I think game one Shake Milton will play 15 or 16,
but it's just like are you sacrificing maybe even like other guys who are even more important to what you're doing, finding their rhythm and flow within the game and being the best version of themselves so that you can just get another guy minutes.
Okay, so Kat McDaniels,
works themselves out.
One in every 3 games, right? They're going to be in foul trouble.
Right.
So it's like, that's just naturally going to, maybe keep them under 30 or put them at 30 for a game. So that, one of them every game maybe has to sacrifice 5 minutes. That probably helps you get Shake into the mix at 9, or really lean into Naz if he's playing really well, or Nickeil if that is something, a matchup that really makes sense for it. The one when we were going to talk about this, and I was like, I wonder if like Mike Conley starts getting kind of like Al Horford did, where it's like, maybe it's just like 26 max during the regular season.
That's what Utah did with him.
Like at some point, you got to play the long game a little bit. And if just to keep Mike healthy, and if it's
do you think the Warriors are going to do that with Steph Curry? Because they're like the same age.
I know, you love that point.
Kevin Durant's like 10 months younger. You think they're going to start 26 in him?
I think we're talking about different caliber of players, but I get your point.
Okay, but your whole point is keeping him healthy for the course of the season. So that is kind of a similar argument.
Yeah.
Same age players. Kevin Durant's had more injuries than Mike Conley. Like,
I don't think it would be a terrible idea to have Kevin Durant play 32 minutes a game this season.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I don't.
But you're talking about 26 for Mike.
I think Mike is maybe the type of personality more receptive to that, or understanding of playing. I'm just, when I was going through it and doing numbers, I'm like, if there's somebody to cut. Yeah. No. It's fair. And it didn't happen last year. Conley played every single game for them since the trade deadline, playing postseason, and played like a spry 26-year-old, but how are you analytically factoring in wear down and all those sort of things? I just think that's the 27. When you put Nickeil down at 27, that's the number I go, I agree. That's high. But you can get to that if Jaden's in foul trouble, which will happen somewhat frequently, and if Mike is, gonna not be a lock for 30 minutes a game. I don't think it's crazy. They're going to need to, I think, at some point choose a little bit of like prioritization between Nickeil and Shake.
Yes.
Like defining that pecking order wise.
Nickeil will play more than Shake. Of that, I am confident. It's are you pushing down Nikhil's minutes to get him like more even with Shake, or are you going to let Nickeil go and push Shake down to like 8 minutes this game? Sorry, that's how it worked out. Which backup point guards do get that sometimes. Like that happens. Yeah. Mike, the only reason I don't see Mike's minutes going down is I really do think that he's the reason why the lineup works. Like why this team and its construct works. And I don't know if without Mike Conley out there, because Shake's not like some distributor. Like without Mike out there, can you run with this lineup? Can this work? Because I think it looked pretty disjointed at times last year until Mike got there, and then it started to make sense. Yeah, like you can stagger it where, okay, Mike's for sure got to be out there when we have Rudy and Karl out there, but maybe the other times that's where we can get him.
I think specifically the just Rudy at center, Rudy, no Cat. Can you afford to play that ever without, how often can you afford to play that with Mike off the floor?
Yeah, right.
Like can they find something there? Like, Kyle and Rudy maintain their chemistry,
Sure.
but now it's kind of like Kyle as a 1 sort of thing, so Mike can be off. I mean, we both noted this right away once they traded for Conley. The rotation was the first sub of the game was Rudy and Mike out together for 2 subs so they could come back in together. That it was extremely targeted with their minutes, but we know Rudy's going to play more minutes, I think, than Mike. So can you get 8-10 comfortable minutes a night where it's Rudy out there without Mike? I think honestly, that's an opportunity for Kyle Anderson to boost his minutes, or for Nickeil Alexander-Walker to boost his minutes, or Shake. Like, can one of those guys, we're 25 games into the season, we're like, damn, like Shake Milton and Rudy Gobert have a plus 9.4 net rating together. Like that's what I think. If I'm Finch and Mike and Nori, I'm kind of like looking for is the guy who can bridge the gaps effectively as a guard when both Kat and Rudy aren't on the floor. We know when Kat and Rudy are on the floor together, it's pretty imperative to have Mike Conley on the floor. What about the other times? That's the question.
Yeah, I agree, because it was definitely last year. Like when Mike was out there, Rudy looked like a major offensive asset. You're like, oh yeah, okay, he does help on that end of the court. And when Mike was not out there, it was like, wow, Rudy kind of clogs things up. Somebody else needs to find that. Somebody else needs to figure out the way to utilize Rudy within the offense. And it's not just, well, when Jaden McDaniels is attacking off a secondary action, he sees Rudy for the lob, because that's not enough of like ingratiating Rudy into the offense and really using him as the asset he can be. Who else can figure that out? Ant has not. And I'm not sure. I don't think Ant's going to this season. I don't think he's there yet as a player to understand how to use Rudy. I think on media day, Ant was like, we started to figure some things out. It's like, nope, I watched the playoffs. You did not. So maybe he'll take strides there, but he has not yet. So somebody else has got.
I think
a primary ball handler's got to figure it out.
Yeah, I think he feels they figured some stuff out in practice. I believe that. We haven't seen it
over the summer, sure,
or I don't know. Even they just got more comfortable and practice. I don't know, but I'm not saying you're wrong. Like the
last time we saw them, Ant was not passing Rudy the basketball.
Yes, that's true. Okay, last thing on the rotation. So we'll just say pecking order. Starting 5. We'll say Nas 6, Kyle 7, Nickeil 8, Shake 9, Troy 10. And Jordan McLaughlin.
Do you think Kyle Anderson's going to play more than Nickeil?
I don't know. I'm mostly trying to get to who's the 12th guy here. I think that's all going to be like this, right?
Oh, okay.
I think Kyle, Nickeil, and Nas, I don't know. But I think it's all, they're guaranteed in there. They're 6, 7, 8. You know? And so to that end, I don't think it really matters, right? It does get to the point, because injuries happen, where you do get down into 12, 13. And when I was doing this, I'm like, okay, like I think Troy Brown is the next guy in if a wing is hurt or whatever. Yeah. J-Mac plays if you need point guard play. But then I was looking at it, I'm like, who would be the next guy? Who's the next guy in the pecking order? We got Josh Minot, Leonard Miller, Wendell Moore, the two-way guy, Luka Garza, Matt Ryan. Like, I kind of think it's Luka Garza.
I do too. It depends on obviously who's out. Like if Carl, Rudy, and Nas are all playing, then it's not Luka Garza. But I think they would probably plug Luka in for one of those guys for minutes rather than going smaller. I do think they would, if pushed into that spot. I think they would rather just keep their kind of traditional lineup structure. And I think they do trust Luka. I think Finch trusts Luka to play minutes.
Situationally, right? Which I think makes him the 12th best player.
Right.
I think is what we're saying, right now. And again,
I don't think we haven't seen the strides out of Wendell and Josh or Leonard to think that they're like ready. They might go out and prove otherwise. They might show it in practice and they're like, nope, they are. But I even think what we've seen in like summer league and whatnot does not suggest that they are ready to comfortably step in for like 3 games in a row in a rotation spot that's needed and contribute. Yeah.
It's like, I could see one of them like at some point getting there, right? Where it's like, oh man, Wendell Moore, great camp or something. And you're like, I don't know. Mike Conley rolled his ankle. We now need another guard in the mix. And we're like, wow, Wendell Moore. Like, I'm not expecting that from Wendell or maybe Josh as a perimeter. That would be, I think, his path in as like perimeter defender or whatever. But I do think I would take Luka Garza as of today, October 11th, to play over the rest of those guys. Jace, let's wrap this up with we're doing weekly prize picks segment on the show where Jason and I pick 2 players from the Thursday night slate of the prize picks available for Thursday night football. Jace, I'll just give you my 2 right away that I have here up on the screen. Russell Wilson, more or less than 0.5 interceptions. I'm taking Russell Wilson to throw a pick. And then it was hard, man. It's hard to pick Chiefs. Like, they have so many guys with like 28 receiving guys. I'm like, I don't know. I did Cortland Sutton. I think Cortland Sutton's a good player if you want to factor in some game flow into this. Maybe Denver's got to throw the ball a little bit to stay in this game. They also have banged up running backs, etc. So I'm taking Russell Wilson to throw a pick and Cortland Sutton to have more than 43.5 receiving yards.
Yeah. I will take one of those Chiefs wide receivers because I would follow Rashee Rice to the end of the world. So 30.5 is an easy over for me on Rashee Rice. He'll probably get like 35 if he does clear it. So like easy over for me. He might barely get there. But I just, every time I watch him, I'm like, he's the best receiver. He is the best receiver.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 19.5. Sky Moore, 27.5.
Those
Justin Watson, I don't even know who that is, 23.5.
Those guys are terrible. Justin Watson was who turned what should have been a pick for the Vikings last week into like a 40-yard gain on a throw up from Mahomes. But yeah, like those guys stink. Rashee Rice is really good. Eventually, I think he's going to be like on the field for 70% of the snaps, and you're like, that guy's really good. He's their number 2 alongside Kelsey. He also like is more slot guy, so if Kelsey is banged up, if he has to miss this game, I think Rice gets used a little bit more. Then I went with Javonte Williams, more than 38.5 rushing yards. Like that's insanely low, and I know like it probably won't be a good game script, but I think he practiced in full yesterday.
Well, that was the thing. I didn't even know that he was playing when I was looking at
this. It's down to 35.5. Wow. Okay. I can't not take a starting running back to rush for over 35.5 rushing yards. I fully understand he might go 11 for 31. Yeah. To me, that's just like if you took the under on that and he could clear it to like 14 minutes into the game, and you'd be like, why didn't I? That's such an easy over. Like I would just take the chances that a starting running back, who I still think is a decent player,
he's a good player,
goes over that.
Yeah, for sure. I think to take less than that is to them to believe that they've been like, nope, 5'8" Jaleel McLaughlin is another J-Mac.
Hell cow. Yeah,
I'm surprised that's not your guy.
Yeah, that's true. He's good. McLaughlin's good, but yeah, I think Javonte Williams, as long as he's healthy, will always get carries on that team. Do you take an under like that if you're not going to watch the football game?
Well, this is the stupid thing that you and I and Kyle always do. Where 80% of our picks are more. And I got both of mine right with Kyle last week, and I think I did less for both of them, which I need to remember that. But I was like, man, Russell Wilson, come on, that's over a 50% proposition that he throws a pick in this game. Like,
right.
It's got to be.
I took Justin Fields on that last week, and he did not. So
he did not. Oh yeah,
he did not.
He played
one
awesome.
for 2 last week. Yeah,
I didn't even look up what we did last week. Did either of us have DJ Moore? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I don't even remember what my other one was, but I remember that Sam Howell rushing yards. It did hit.
There you go. I think I was one in that too. I'll go back and look. We'll track.
We always track until it gets too embarrassing, and then we stop.
Yeah, that's true.
Week 10, we're like, I don't remember what I am.
Oh yeah, it was DJ Moore or something. Yeah, but I think I had that. This is Prize Picks. I think particularly during football season, it's a fun extra way to play fantasy football. PrizePicks.com or Prize Picks app. They'll throw you a $100 sign up bonus if you do use that promo code when you sign up. And then so how it works is those are me and Jace's 4 picks. If we bet $20 on that, we would get 10-1. And if all 4 hit, that would be 200, obviously. So that's just kind of how it is. It's kind of a boom bust type of game. But I think if you are a kind of fantasy football NFL nerd like Jace and me and Kyle are, it's a fun thing to do. But then also basketball, it's going to be starting up soon. I haven't really looked at the MLB ones, but I'm sure there's some of that with the playoffs going on there too. So PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app. Promo code Dane to sign up. We always appreciate you guys supporting the sponsors.
If you're listening this afternoon, and you're like, hey, I'm going to watch the Twins game tonight, you could pick Royce Lewis to go over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's fun.
Make anything more interesting.
It's a classic make things more. It's actually probably better for a sport that you don't, or like,
Yes.
I already have a fantasy football team,
Right,
right? Like, so I'm like, okay, it's so-and-so, I'm watching for them. But yeah, it's fun. Well, Jace, I appreciate you doing this. Next time we talk, we'll have another game to talk about. Wolves, Knicks this Saturday, and then we'll be in the thick of it the Wednesday after that. The season begins after the Raptors, or they play the Raptors for that game. So stay tuned here. I will have, for the rest of this week, I will have Kyle and I are going to do some sort of predictions pod on Friday, and then obviously the live show on Saturday.
I'm sure Kyle's predictions will be very well grounded.
This was his idea. So, which I think we did do last year, which I think one of my bold predictions was Naz Reid gets traded to the Boston Celtics. That one didn't hit either. But it's a fun time of year to do that sort of stuff. And we there's only so much training camp Wolves talk that we could do. But yeah, sign Kyle up for Jade McDaniels Defensive Player of the Year for sure.
And most improved. He's going to sweep a lot of things.
All right. He's Jace Frderick. You can read him over at the Pioneer Press, and follow him on Twitter at Jace Frderick. Jace, I'll see you at practice in a couple hours.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. I'll talk to you on Friday with Kyle. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down.